those things were made. Benjamin has the same idea 250 years ago. These are the dark secrets of the marketplace. So he really pioneered a politics of consumption. Very important. He wanted to live, as he put it, these are his words, he wanted to live what he called the innocent fruits of the earth. You know what he meant by that? Things that were made with no human exploitation and no animal exploitation. That's the way he wanted to live. So that's the fourth element, this kind of commoning radicalism. And then there's a fifth, and I think this is probably the most surprising discovery in this book. Two different people, one of whom was Benjamin Franklin, called Benjamin Lay a Christian cynic philosopher. Now, the Cynics were a school of philosophy in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, led by a man named Diogenes. Diogenes was known, as were all Cynics, for a central idea. The Greeks called it parrhesia. And basically what it means is speaking truth to power. You must always tell the truth, especially in the face of power. No matter what the danger, you must always speak the truth. Do you start to see how this is Benjamin Lay? Always speaking the truth to power. There's a story about Diogenes that he became so famous that Alexander the Great once sought out his company, and Diogenes is lying in repose, sunning himself, and Alexander the Great strolls in with his retinue and says, "Oh, great Diogenes, how may I help you? Any favor that I might perform for you, I would be happy to do so." And he's full of this kind of florid language, and Diogenes is kind of looking at him and finally says, "Well, there is something you could do." "Anything at all, Diogenes. What can I do for you?" Diogenes says, "Get out of my sunlight. That's all you can do for me. I don't need you." So this is the idea. Images actually of Diogenes, who walked everywhere he went, who scorned the highborn, who combined great wit with strong moral message. Diogenes, by the way, invented the word cosmopolitan. They both wore beards, they both used walking sticks, they both provoked stories. And so Benjamin Lay, in some ways, modeled himself on Diogenes. So he was literally a cynic philosopher. But then there's this other fascinating connection, because let's attend to the other part of the phrase. He is a Christian cynic philosopher. He combined these pagan ideas, and Benjamin is a free thinker, right? The pagan ideas of the cynic philosophers with the ideas of primitive Christianity. And some scholars actually think that the cynic philosophers had a lot of impact on some of the early Christians, especially Jesus. The phrase, "the love of money is the root of all evil," is a cynic idea. So that is within Christianity, folded within Christianity. Okay, so my argument in the book is that these five things, radical Quakerism, maritime radicalism, the struggles of African American peoples, the commons, and this ancient radical philosophy, the combination of those things allowed Benjamin Lay to make this breakthrough, and in a sense, to become enlightened 50 years before the Enlightenment. Right? His was an enlightenment from below. A working man. So why is he unknown? Well, this is complicated. And it's maybe a little awkward because one of the main reasons why he is unknown has to do with the history of the Quakers, who in his own day did everything they could to marginalize him. Benjamin was the most disowned Quaker of the 18th century, I'm quite sure. He was denounced, he was vilified, he was mocked and scorned and laughed at. He never backed down. Another man from Essex named John Farmer came to the American colonies a few years before Benjamin, and he also bore witness against slavery. And in a meeting in Philadelphia, after he did that, a wealthy Quaker stood up and said to all the assembled, "We must look upon this man as an enemy to the country." And the other Quakers agreed with the great man, and John Farmer was required to retract his words. And on his deathbed, John Farmer said, "I'm easy," as he put it, "about all the things in my life except that one moment when I backed down on the issue of slavery." Well, I'm happy to tell you that Benjamin Lay never backed down. Never. But the Quakers did a lot to marginalize him. Now, historians have also played a major part in this, because I think that it's fair to say that even the historians of the abolition movement usually have very little to say about Lay. I think we could probably summarize the view by quoting probably the most famous historian of abolition, David Bryan Davis, who called Benjamin Lay a demented little hunchback. And this is actually important for all three words. Benjamin is marginal because he was assumed to be deranged, because he was a little person, because he was a hunchback. In fact, his methods have a very clear genealogy coming out of the English Revolution. He wasn't the least bit deranged. He was just extreme in what he thought needed to be done, as all prophets are. He believed that if people didn't listen to him, Quakerism might be destroyed. So I think the combination of the early repression and then the systematic forgetting that is engineered by historians has resulted in this situation where Lay is unknown. But in my view, folks, he's a visionary. He imagined a very different kind of world. And I think we need to honor that. So I want to finish with something quite specific.